These three MVP mistakes kill your project before launch. I've worked with 30 plus early stage startups, and today I'm going to show you exactly why this happens and how to make sure you're not building the wrong thing fast. So first things first, right? When you're starting out, you first have to make sure that your MVP is solving a real problem and there's a clear outcome defined, right? Now, when you have this idea in mind, you're so motivated about this project that you don't get to the validation process, right? You think in your mind that the problem you think exists actually does. But in reality, that might not be the case, right? Because I'm talking from experience, having worked with 30 plus early stage startups. And the right frame of mind is that you have to first make sure that there is a real problem. And for that, you go through the validation process, okay? Validation, which is essentially basic level of validation. You talk to businesses, if it's a B2B product, that the problem you're thinking actually exists. If there is a yes, then you should move forward, right? The other thing is that you should define your outcome, which is clearly mentioned, which means that the product is going to do so and so. Maybe it's a B2B product, right? Or it's a payment gateway. If it's a payment gateway, then what is the audience that you're targeting? Is it businesses? And even to further niche down, is it e-commerce, payment gateway, right? So clear outcome has to be defined. Now, if you don't have the clear outcome, this means you're not balancing these two anchors, and that's what the MVP does. Moreover, you have to see your MVP as bridging the gap in between these two entities, right? So you have to consider that you are a startup, right, with limited resources, and your eventual goal is that your MVP gets to market fit status, right? Product market fit status. Now, normally what happens, there are three problems that most founders overlook. So the first one is that there's feature overload, which you need to stay away from. So when you're scoping the project out, you keep turning features into the initial scope or the initial phase of the project, making it heavy in terms of cost and timeline. The second thing that you need to consider is you need to define clear success metric, which normally founders don't look forward to, okay? So, for example, you're targeting $1 million in annual revenue the first year, okay, of release, first year, okay? First year of release, or it is 10K plus active subscriptions, okay, subs. Now, normally that is also not defined. What happens is, if you don't have these success metrics defined, you don't make intelligent decisions when it comes to technicalities, right? So you have to make sure the product you're building and you're working with the development team, they're keeping in check these success metrics so the technical side supports the business side, right? When these are not kept in check and the system is programmed, let's just say, or maybe not 10K plus active subscriptions, it maybe supports 200 subs, right? If that's the case, what happens? When you market your product in accordance with 10K plus active subscriptions, your product starts slowing down because it was programmed in the back end for 200 subs, right? So that's the problem. The third thing is that normally founders don't work on the feedback loop. And this has directly to do with the feature overload aspect as well, okay? Since you think that the product you're thinking about is so perfect, you start overloading features. And once you roll out phase one, the reality kicks in and you see that nobody even uses half of the application. Now, the drawback is that you've already put a lot of resources and time into the project, right? And you can't essentially work on the feedback loop because people are not asking for the features that they actually want. Since you are a startup, right, you are resource limited, okay? You are resource limited. You put all the resources in the initial first phase of the scope, expecting that you will generate revenue, but people are not willing to put in that much money unless you put out those features that actually solve their problem. Also, let me just give you an analogy here, okay? When you're starting out, this is how the graph actually looks like. So if you have slow aligned MVP, that's actually the way out. And normally founders opt for fast, unaligned MVP, which is actually not the right way to move forward, right? Because honestly, you have to understand that the first impression of the business is the last impression, right? Now, if you have unaligned MVP, okay, this is how the trajectory looks like. So you're initially fast, but it's unaligned. So you slow down as you increase the traffic onto your product. But if you talk about the slow aligned MVP, it's actually slow initially because you're so focused on perfecting the shredded down features of the MVP to reduce costs and the timeline. So that initially takes more time, but as you move forward, it actually comes out to be way faster in the long run compared to the fast online MVP. So the point I'm trying to make here, this is actually how the trajectory looks like. So you ideate, you do basic level of validation, you scope the project out, right? So this is essentially, I would say, first phase, okay? First phase, or you just focus on core features, right? Core features. You scope the project out, you build and you deploy, right? Once you deploy, you start getting feedback, and then you scope against the feedback that is given to you by all these users that you've onboarded. You scope those features out, you build, and then you keep moving through these circles until you get to the product market fit status, because that is the actual goal of the MVP. So if you keep these 3 pointers in check, you're positioning yourself for long-term success. Just to reiterate, you have to make sure that the MVP is shredded version of itself. You are consistently defining success metrics to support that growth technically on the back end from a technology perspective. And you're targeting on perfecting the product along the way through consumer feedback. If you got value out of this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care.